The world is a very fascinating place, and it's transforming at really breathtaking rates and at a very different scale and pace than we have in the past. In fact, global fertility rates are declining at worrying speeds for many, and the human population is projected to reach its crest within the century and then fall. In fact, 1 in 4 people around the world currently live in a country where the population size is estimated to already have peaked, and that means the population size is only going to decrease. I don't know if you've heard of people talking about the falling birth rates and the fear of the population collapse. It's actually not that people don't want kids. In fact, most people actually do want kids. The real challenge is that there's rising costs of living, unfair gender expectations peak that, and the uncertainty about the future that's making it really, really hard for many people to start or grow their families in a way that they initially wanted to. We're exploring the focus on fertility drop, but also, some of the factors that are impacting, the societal factors that are impacting people either not wanting children at all or not wanting to have as many children as they initially would have wanted. We're unpacking this conversation this morning with Kenneth Juma, an epidemiologist and senior research officer within the Sexual, Reproductive, Maternal, Newborn, Child and Adolescent Health Unit at the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. Kenneth, thank you so much for your time this morning. Yeah, it seems like the younger populations, the Gen Zs, the millennials are sort of choosing different, and it seems to us like they're being really intentional about why and how they're giving birth.
Yeah, absolutely. That is totally true. There is indeed greater consciousness among younger people in terms of their choice to give birth, to have families, to have more children, certainly because of much more broader macroeconomic factors, including the state of the economy, the fear around their futures, uncertainty about their future, opportunities for work, challenges about housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of education, and many other factors. So these factors put collectively are driving a certain pressure among younger people to either delay the beginning, giving birth, or decide to totally keep that option out of the table until when they feel they have certainty around, their economic and social well-being.
And I guess in some aspects it's a good thing, right, that we're seeing more people being intentional and actually thinking about the process of bringing children into the world and what that would mean, because it seems like, historically people just knew that, okay, you get old, you have children, that's just how it is. But if you go on, platforms like social media, you see more and more people discussing the reasons why they either want to remain child-free or they've only decided to have a certain number of children. Should we be seeing this as a positive thing, or maybe that we're actually much more impacted by these societal issues than historically we were?
No, so that's a very important point. Indeed, this should have been a very positive trend for a long time now, for decades. From since there was the advent of family planning, the idea was that people should have sustainable family sizes, the number of children, a number of people in a household that they can sustain based on the economic, opportunities. However, when the trend now turns towards a situation where fertility is declining and declining drastically to the extent to which then over time there will be other challenges that were not necessarily anticipated. One of those challenges is that there is the demographic dividends that are supposed to be achieved by a growing younger population. Now, when a certain age group is exposed to this drastic drop in population increase, then at some point in the future we'll see chronic loss of labor force and productivity. And when there's loss in productivity and loss in labor force, then again you'll see economic crisis and challenges that sometimes are not intended but yet then occur as a result of this unplanned drastic reduction in fertility trends. However, over time again, we know that yes, most of African countries, especially urban settings, are overpopulated. But they're not overpopulated because in a country there's unsustainable population sizes. It's overpopulated because of unplanned rural-urban migration. So while the driver has been to allow us achieve that sustainable population size, the goal is not to drastically reduce fertility or altogether stop fertility.
That's so interesting that you say that. It's intriguing for me because just generally in the past few years, the big narrative around Africa's population is the fact that we have a huge youth population, but also that we have a growing population, and there's always like these projections of high population growths, even when you project into 2050. However, this particular State of World Population 2025 report kind of speaks of a different narrative. They kind of challenges people's realities on the ground on why they would actually want children, or also the reasons why they can't have children. Can you contrast those two dynamics of the projections and the realities on the ground? Is it even possible to do so?
Yes, it is possible to do so. It is possible to do so by addressing not the symptom, but rather the challenge, or the main reason why people are deciding increasingly to either have fewer children or not have children at all, or have less than the children that they had intended in the first place. Okay? So one of the main driving reasons for this particular trend, or sort of a reversal in what we've been talking about for a long time, is really the economic anxiety. Economy is the number one driver, also cited in the report just released yesterday by UNFPA, as the leading driver for people having less than desired family sizes. Now, what has governments done? Governments have tended to incentivize or give bonuses to families or couples that then have had children as an encouragement to have more. But that's not the challenge, because the bonus is so insufficient to cover what is seen as the long-term cost of having a child or more children. Okay, for every child there's additional money to pay for healthcare. For every child there's additional money and additional time off to be taken by the woman to offer care, and this time taken off by the woman sometimes, or even the man, is not paid for. That's one. Or number two, even if it's paid for at a very low rate that people do not find it economically sustainable to then have children. Okay. Yeah. Now, what the government really should do is a much more broad-based kind of intervention that addresses the cost of living, addresses the cost of having children, the cost of education for children. In some countries, they introduced free primary and secondary education, and that was a great incentive, because then it allowed greater enrollment of children to school. And once children are enrolled in school, of course, that protects them against many of the poor, sometimes sexual and reproductive health, but also social outcomes. But the government needs to do more, especially in addressing some of those microeconomic drivers.
Some of these drivers, Kenneth, are quite tangible. The economy is something tangible. If people have much better economic chances, they might want to have more of these children. But some are intangible, like you just spoke. Women have to take more time off. So I want to also speak about how gender inequality is deepening the crisis of the fertility drop all across the world. It's 21 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. We'll continue this conversation after the break.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatawo on the move.
Hey, you're listening to On the Move with myself, Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatawo. I see you, Lazaro Mwanza. You came into our live feed. Samson Kamanga, we see you as well. Afiani Zurike, we see you as well. Thank you for coming in and out that live stream as we continue our conversations here on the Move. We're speaking to Kenneth Juma, who is a senior research officer within the sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn child and adolescent health unit at the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. We're speaking about the State of World Population 2025 report. It's actually saying, look, people are thinking about childbirth and their fertility a little bit differently. They're looking at the challenges around them and making huge considerations around those. And Kenneth has been speaking about this to help us understand this a new feature that we are seeing in how people are looking at, either wanting more children or not. So that's an interesting one. Kenneth, let's speak about the gender narratives here, because it's very interesting that women are also feel like they're making themselves, especially in the younger generations, felt in terms of why they make the decision to have children or not to have children. It feels like they are standing with a sense of knowing that they've got a dynamic of choice, where with their male counterparts, it feels like they feel like an imposition still, and the traditional norms continue to say there's an expectation for them to actually impose this as a reality for themselves to have children.
Yes. So yeah, that's totally right and very accurate. The way you have sort of presented it. The thing is that traditionally the role of the man was to be the provider, and sometimes the role of the woman in the traditional setting was to be sort of this, homekeeper, the person who brings up children and is always available. However, with transitions over time, we see a greater contribution of women to the economy, a greater contribution of women to being employed in formal workplaces. So as a result, there has been a transition and a shift in terms of how things are now being done compared to in the past. What happens now is that more women are pursuing career goals, and career goals take time, take a lot of effort and resources, and as they are pursuing education and then career prospects, at times it leads to delays in beginning to start a family. Okay, as that is happening, at the time when they want to start a family, it's a balance between my career prospects and economic certainty in future vis-a-vis settling down to start raising a family. Now, the role of men is also in question, because women are tending now to decide to either delay or be very intentional with when and with who to give birth. And as such, if they feel that the situation, the context is not guaranteeing that future economic security, then they would rather pursue their education or career goals up to a time when they feel they can achieve, that certainty. However, what then that does is that it delays the onset of giving birth. When you start giving birth, perhaps after the age of 30, you have a limited time to give birth to more children compared to someone who was married by the age of 19 or 20 and started giving birth immediately. So all these dynamics are then playing a role in the reducing fertility. In Kenya, for instance, compared to 1989 to now, women are couples are opting to giving birth to less than 3 children compared to over 7 in 1989. That's a drastic
7.
Yeah,
compared to 7 in 1989.
Wow.
So that's a drastic reduction over a very short period of time, and partly driven by these anxieties around economic certainty, but also the role of each gender. Now, one key example I would also like to give is when then the woman decides to give birth and has to take care of the home and the children. Again, what happens to her career? What happens can she still keep the job and still raise that family? Sometimes the options are limited. It's only COVID that came and showed us that we can be more flexible in how we operate our working hours, working from home, alternative working, shifts and so on and so forth, that offer that length into how employers can be more flexible. But otherwise, for a long time, it has been that if you cannot do 8 to 5, sometimes there's no job for you.
And in terms of the fertility element, how does that feature into this one? Because we can't just speak about it in terms of just a decision-making perspective, but also from that biological aspect. Exactly.
So, indeed, we live in a very pronatalist society where desire for children is high.
You just gave us a big word.
Desire for children is very high.
Okay.
And children are seen as a resource, as a guarantee for the future, right? To take care of you in your old age. Lack of children is profoundly abhorred sometimes in the traditional setting. And sometimes a man or a woman is labeled names if they are unable to give birth. However, now the biological role is that infertility has also increased dramatically for a variety of reasons, including some of the chronic diseases that we that are now more prevalent in this era or age. And because of infertility is high, we know that access to infertility treatment is also, pathetically low, almost unavailable in the public healthcare setting. It's only available in public healthcare setting. And in those private healthcare settings, infertility treatment is extremely expensive. So it becomes a rich people's problem. And those who are poor have, you are shunned and almost, condemned to permanent lack of children because you cannot afford that care that then can allow you to restore some level of infertility. So as a result of that and the lack of attention to any efforts towards expanding access to fertility treatment, then we also see women and men and couples that desire to have children but are unable to have children because they are dealing or experiencing or struggling through infertility.
Mm-hmm. We have a minute left, and I don't know how we're going to wrap this one up, but I guess we have to just sum up just this new dynamic. I think it is a new dynamic because it seems more pronounced, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key messages to throw out there is that the government needs to act right and not sort of inject these short-term micro interventions that do not address the long-term anxieties and challenges that people have, even as they desire children. Number two is that fertility trends are not necessarily driven by women, but it's a couple's thing. And I think those who are in decision-making also need to give it a more comprehensive look and address some of those anxieties in the economy, education, childcare, that then drive couples and individuals to choose to have fewer children or not have any at all.
Well, thank you so much, Kenneth. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
That's Kenneth Juma joining us from the African Population and Health Research Center in Kenya. It takes us to 10:30 Central African Time. Hey, Fizozo, that's Fia Lingwati, is coming into our stream as well. He's going to let us know what's happening in our sports.